Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to CGS's webinar, Top Issues and Priorities for Graduate Deans, presenting the key findings from the 2017 CGS Pressing Issues Survey. Our speakers today are Hironao Okahana, Assistant Vice President, Research and Policy Analysis at CGS, Mark Smith, Dean of the Graduate School at Purdue University, and Kenneth Polishchuk, Manager for Public Policy and Government Affairs. Our speakers will speak for about 40 minutes today, and we'll have plenty of time for question and answer period. The slides will be available to you after the presentation, posted on the CGS website and sent via email to anyone signed up for today's webinar. You can submit questions through the control panel on your screen as shown. And if you have any technical problems, you can get troubleshooting help at the link below. If you have trouble hearing us, you can switch to a different connection. The easiest way to do that is to switch from mic and speakers to telephone or vice versa. And if you have problems with your telephone connection, you can click Problem Dialing In, and you get an alternate telephone number to dial. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment and introduce CGS's President, Suzanne Ortega, who will make a few brief remarks.
Thank you, Julia, and welcome, colleagues. We're so glad you could join us for today's webinar. As I think you know, the CGS Pressing Issues Survey is a long-standing tool we use to collect information from you about the issues that are your greatest challenges, concerns, and priorities. We rely on that input as we think about programming for our meetings and our various best practice agendas. So we want to ensure you that we take what you tell us very, very seriously. The purpose of today's webinar is really to give you a big picture view of our overall findings. I'm certain that at times as deans and graduate school staff, you have a particular problem or an issue or maybe even an opportunity that crosses your desk, and you wonder if you are the only one in the world who ever had that problem or the excitement of a new opportunity. Well, hopefully during the course of this webinar you will be in a better position to put that experience or experiences in the context of the larger state of affairs and the institutional priorities of your colleagues. We will end up and conclude the look at the Pressing Issues Survey with a short discussion of some of the CGS resources that you may find helpful and useful as you address some of these issues. So, without further ado, I want to turn the presentation over to Hiro Okahana, who will walk us through some of the study's main findings.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everybody for tuning in to today's webinar. So we are going to go over several major points from the 2017 CGS Pressing Issues Survey. And as I go through some of the findings to help highlight key themes that emerged from the survey results, two additional speakers will join and share their insights that are pertinent to some of the findings. One is Dr. Mark Smith, the Dean of Graduate Schools at the Purdue University, will talk about the faculty diversity and what graduate deans may be able to do. And Kenneth Polishchuk from Council of Graduate School will talk about helpful resources for graduate deans to communicate the public benefits of graduate education or work on the advocacy. A little bit about the survey. CGS Pressing Issues Survey is conducted annually, and as Suzanne pointed out, this is a key vehicle for us at the Council of Graduate Schools to stay up to date with some of the key priorities that our member deans are working on. 2017 survey introduced a new questionnaire design for the long-time participant of this survey might have noticed that this year, instead of asking you to simply choose top 3 issues, we asked a little bit more elaborated a list of questions to go through. The survey was fielded to all 485 graduate deans or equivalents at the CGS member institutions based in United States and Canada via email, in early February. And the response rate was 42%, or 205 graduate deans responded to the survey. So despite increase the length of the survey, we are still able to get the pretty close to the last prior year's response rate. And a special thanks to all graduate deans who took time in their busy schedule to complete this survey. Before we go into the survey results, I wanted to first share who responded to this survey. So of the 205 CGS member institutions, 69.7% was from U.S. public institutions, and 63.9% was U.S. doctoral universities. The largest group that responded to this survey were graduate deans from U.S. public doctoral institutions. In some slides, I will separately report the survey results for U.S. doctoral universities and U.S. master's colleges and universities, but unless noted, all results that discussed in today's presentation include all respondents with valid responses to particular questionnaire items. So I'm going to go over how graduate deans rate 9 areas of priorities based on how likely they will personally devote their time in the next 12 months to work on. So the top 3 issues were relatively clear. They are promoting diversity and inclusion in graduate student body, providing leadership in graduate enrollment management, and securing institutional resources and the support for graduate programs. All these 3 areas priorities receive over 60% of graduate deans saying that they are very likely to devote substantial part of their time in next 12 months. And when you add those deans that responded with likely to do so, about 85% or so plan to personally engage in these 3 areas of priorities. In several other areas, the responses from U.S. doctoral universities and U.S. master's colleges and universities look alike, but in these 2 top areas of graduate deans' priorities, it look a little bit different when you look at the doctoral institutions, the master's colleges and the universities. So the 90% of graduate deans at the U.S. doctoral universities noted that they are likely or very likely to devote their time promoting diversity and inclusion in the graduate student body. But only about 80% of them noted that they likely or very likely provided leadership in graduate enrollment management. And the gap is a little bit wider when you look at just those deans responded as very likely, so 72% against the 57%. But when we move to U.S. master's colleges and universities, and 92% of graduate deans at U.S. master's colleges and universities noted that they are likely or very likely to provide a leadership in graduate enrollment management, while only 84% say that they devote a substantial amount of their time to promote diversity and inclusion in graduate student body. And again, when you look at just the deans responded very likely, the difference is even wider. So the 77% say very likely to engage in the graduate enrollment management, but 49% say that promote diversity and inclusion in the graduate student body. So there are a little bit of difference in terms of top priorities for graduate deans by institutional characteristics. And then moving down to the other issues of importance, the next 3 issues, the securing extra funds for the graduate school, securing more stipends, fellowship for students, and the communicating public benefits of graduate education to broader audiences. So those, when combined with people responded both very likely and likely together, they're not much difference from the top 3 issues that I just mentioned. But when you look at the graduate deans who responded that they were very likely, they're very likely to engage in these areas, the difference is a little bit clear. About 50% of graduate deans noted that they're very likely to engage in those 3 areas of priorities. And the last 3, they have a little bit more, the even clearer difference in terms of the number of graduate deans reported they are very likely or likely to engage. These 3 items are ensuring compliance with Title IX or other laws prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender, promoting diversity and the inclusion in graduate faculty, and ensuring the laboratory safety. And those came as at the low end of the list of areas that graduate deans would be spending a substantial amount of their time. And this is a bit interesting because the difference between the plans to engage in the student diversity issues and the faculty diversity issues were rather starkly different. So you recall from the earlier slide, 65% of graduate deans say they are very likely to promote student diversity, but only 31% of graduate deans say that they're likely to get into the faculty diversity part of it. And the difference was especially clear for what the U.S. doctoral institutions. 72% of graduate deans at the U.S. doctoral institutions say they're very likely to work on the graduate student body diversity, but only 32% say that they'll personally engage in the faculty diversity part of the question. And but this may be to do with the fact that the faculty recruitment and hiring decisions are often housed outside of the graduate school, such as faculty affairs offices or individual programs, and perhaps the faculty recruitment part of it is far more removed from graduate schools than, say, student recruitment efforts. But when we look at a graduate dean's response or the outlook in terms of how their institutions may be engaging in the initiative to increase the student diversity and the faculty diversity, fewer graduate deans have reported that they think that their home institutions will likely to devise new recruitment strategy to increase the graduate faculty. And again, this may not be the area of responsibilities that are directly related to graduate school, but promoting faculty diversity goes hand in hand with promoting diverse and inclusive learning environment for students, as well as to the successful placement of a diverse pool of PhD degree and other terminal degree recipients from our graduate schools. And there are ways for graduate deans to be a resource, if not take a lead in promoting faculty diversity. And I'm going to now turn the microphone over to the Dean Mark Smith of Purdue University to talk about an example from the Big Ten Academic Alliance and working on the faculty diversity from graduate schools point.
Okay, thank you, Hiro. I appreciate that. So right now, let me just confess, I don't have visuals, so I'm just going to talk and hope that you can follow with the slides. So the first slide should be, I have 9 slides. The first slide should be improving faculty diversity. If that is displayed there, can we move to the next slide? Graduate school deans typically have. That's the first line there. So the question is, how can graduate school deans who have usual functions affect faculty diversity, because oftentimes that's not the kind of thing that we are charged to do. And so what I would point out is that, first of all, as deans, we have influence over graduate student enrollment. So that's part of the pipeline. You start with students who graduate with a PhD, underrepresented minorities, and then they can go into postdoctoral positions and they can go into faculty positions. So we clearly have influence there. We also have sometimes a voice in promoting inclusion on our campus, because we meet with our academic dean colleagues, we meet with the provost, and we can carry weight in that area. We also have access to NSF programs that are where graduate school deans typically are PIs, and the best example is the AGEP program. And so many of us are part of those kinds of alliances. And particularly now with the focus on the professoriate, again, as graduate school deans, we have influence, and so that's important. A few of us, or many of us, have control over fellowships, and in some universities we have control over the postdocs. So in those cases, again, we have more influence.
Muted.
What I'm going to talk about right now is the Big Ten Academic Alliance. It's titled Professorial Advancement Initiative, and this
Unmuted.
program, all right, so it's a consortium of the Big Ten schools, and this is an example of how the deans in this alliance are helping to improve faculty diversity. So now if we can go to the next slide, my slide number 3, that says Big Ten Academic Alliance. We started this thing with a group of 12 universities, and the idea was that we were going to create resources and work together to have an influence. We were fortunate to have a good infrastructure in place where our colleagues met on a regular basis. The Big Ten Academic Alliance was formerly called the CIC. The name was changed, but we do a lot of things together. Can we move to the next slide? This is the one that has the picture. So we had an ambitious goal, and the goal was to double the rate at which all of our Alliance schools combined hired underrepresented minority faculty. And it was rather interesting when we went through the exercise to collect our numbers. So it turns out that when we looked at all 12 universities on average, and we did a 3-year average, we were hiring 24 underrepresented minority faculty members each year. So that's not a very large number, and we had a lot of work to do. And so our goal was to double that, to try to hire at least 50 or more underrepresented minority faculty members on an annual basis. A challenging goal. Can we go to the next slide? This is the 5th slide. So our approach here was to take a 2-prong approach. We're going to work on 2 angles. One is to create a pool of underrepresented minority postdocs, and in some cases PhDs, but mostly postdocs. And we were going to try to work with them, mentor them across the Alliance with faculty mentors across the Alliance to prepare them for faculty positions within the Big Ten Alliance schools. And then the second prong was to work on the receiving end, where we work with the faculty search committees who hire faculty, and we give workshops and we educate those search committee members on the benefits of having a diverse faculty so they appreciate the goal, and then the literature on unconscious bias and a process that will help them to make better decisions that will result in better diversity with respect to hiring. So we put together these 2 approaches as an alliance, and we collected input from all of our schools and lots of materials and so forth. So can I go to the next slide, please, that where the 2 bold words are mentor matching. So for that first prong, where we're talking about preparing our postdocs, we have a mentoring network. So on each individual campus, we've identified a mentor. We've provided some modules that will serve as a guideline to the mentor, so that the mentor covers all of the basic things that really need to be covered to prepare the postdocs for faculty positions, including helping them with interviews and doing some mock interview drills, those kinds of things. In addition, we have mentors on other campuses who also work with the postdocs. And the nice thing about that is it provides access to opportunities on other campuses as well as a different perspective, so that the postdocs can be better prepared when they enter the interview process. And so this kind of mentoring idea, and again, we have materials that support this, this can be done by all of us. I mean, as graduate school deans, we can either work with our PhD students and or our postdocs, but this is something, again, that we all can do. If we can go to the next slide, hiring committees. So as I mentioned before, we're working with hiring committees, and it turns out it's quite common on all of our campuses to have some kind of workshop or presentation that's given to our hiring committees, because there are a lot of legal do's and don'ts associated with hiring. And so usually the Office of Equity, or whatever it may be called on an individual campus, has some kind of a workshop already in place. So we put together materials that will augment those kinds of workshops for hiring members and members of the hiring committee. And so what we have, first of all, is we've collected a library with lots of resources that have been taken from the CIC, so lots of best practices and so forth. We also have created some video case studies that can be used, that can be shown to the committees, that set the stage for search committee scenarios, and then we can have discussions about this. Where are the biases? How do you identify those biases? How do you intervene when you see that the committee is starting to go in the wrong direction? And so we can have those kinds of discussions and train committee members so that they can be more effective as diversity champions. And then, you know, what we're doing now is we're in the process of disseminating these resources. So our grant is about to come to an end, and we have these resources available that we are now open to sharing to the larger community. One other thing that we did is we collected a directory of all of the postdocs in our program. And so when searches are taking place, members of the search committees can go to this directory and reach out to prospective candidates and invite them to apply. So we think that's kind of an important component there. Let me just say a few words. Let's go to the next slide. This is my second to last slide. When we have the workshops, we cover a variety of different topics. One of them is active recruiting, and that's very important because the concept there is that you have to really be aggressive in inviting underrepresented minority candidates to apply. The whole key is to diversify the pool of applicants. We talk about the evaluation process. Again, we talk about bias and assumption, how you exercise a process that's fair and thorough, and then we talk about the interview process. So it's a pretty thorough workshop. The full version of it is about 4 hours, but we can do versions that are as short as 2 hours. So let's go to my last slide here, slide number 9. Kind of my summary here is that I think as deans, regardless of what authority you have or what programs report under you, I think that there are many things that we can do to help promote faculty diversity. One is that we can be a part of an AGEP network, and even if your school doesn't have an AGEP program, the AGEP programs that already exist can provide resources to you which can be helpful. And the Big Ten Academic Alliance is one example of that. You can also leverage your professional development activities to help mentor underrepresented minorities, to coach them, to prepare them to enter into the professoriate. So that's something that we as deans can definitely do. We can also take advantage of new NSF proposals, such as the NSF Includes proposal, which will there's money available for our campuses so that we can start to adopt some of these best practices and integrate them. Then there are postdoc organizations that are out there. We can start to work with those postdoc organizations and encourage postdocs through that channel to apply to our schools. And then the final thing that I will mention is that we can have a voice in adopting new policies on the university campus. And so just because you have access, right, that people will listen to you, you can, for example, suggest that a diversity statement be included in the ad for faculty. So we did that, and now it's a policy, it's a requirement. We also require on my campus, everyone who is serving on the search committee has to go through one of our workshops. This is a policy decision, and so having a voice, you can help institute those kinds of policies. So that's an example. I'm going to stop here. That's an example of some of the kinds of things that you can do to help improve faculty diversity on your campus.
Thank you so much, Mark. If you go to our website, as you might know, the CGS recently hosted a national forum for NSF's alliances for graduate education and the professoriate, and some of the work from the Big Ten Alliance and the other alliances from across the country. You can find their abstracts of their activities as well as the what was the conference agenda is available there. And later in spring, early summer, we plan to publish the proceedings from the conference for CGS members to benefit as well. So stay tuned for those additional information. And going back to the Pressing Issues Survey's result, Title IX compliance and laboratory safety came relatively lower end of the list in terms of what graduate deans may be personally working on. Again, this may be that these issues are typically handled by someone other than graduate deans. However, as you recall, these have been some of the hot issues that CGS featured at the recent meetings. Last summer workshop, we had a technical workshop on the Title IX compliance issues, having the Dean Fiona Doyle from Berkeley and Jessica Lee of the Center for Work-Life Law to talk about the Title IX related issues, and those slides are available on the CGS website. And these issues, the compliance on the Title IX or laboratory safety, some of those issues require a holistic approach to set the culture that prevents the discrimination, harassment, or accident that comes from the leadership level as well. So while these may not be something that the graduate deans see at the day-to-day level, but we also wanted to bring to your attention that we don't lose focus on some of these areas. Moving on to the next set of the areas, I'm going to go over 5 areas of priorities based on how likely graduate schools will do in the next 12 months based on your responses. So 6 out of 60% of graduate deans noted that their graduate schools are likely or very likely to change international recruitment strategies. And 43% of them also noted that their graduate schools are likely or very likely to offer additional visa resources for international graduate students. And probably this is not a surprising result, considering that 40% overall and 48% of graduate deans from U.S. doctoral institutions observed downward changes in international graduate applications compared to this admission cycles and the last year's admission cycle. Our finding was consistent with a similar survey conducted by a group of several other international education-related organizations, which reported 39% of responding institutions noted the decline in the international applications, both for the undergraduate included. And much of the uncertainty remains on this topic about what's happening with the international graduate applications and international graduate enrollment. And the next survey that comes from a Council of Graduate Schools to take a look at international graduate admissions will happen in late September, early October, and we are hoping to have a result in the winter to you. But in the meantime, as we continue to be in this uncertain territory, I encourage graduate deans to closely follow primarily two statistics to see what's happening with the international graduate admissions. One is acceptance rates of offers of admissions made to prospective international graduate students, to see in terms of like a number of offers of admission your graduate schools made, and to see how many of them are accepting these offers to come to the United States and to study. And also to encourage you to communicate with your international education's office and to take a look at some of the visa processing time and also the visa issuance rates to see what percentage of, if your prospective international graduate students are having a difficulty obtaining the visas to come to the United States and pursue their graduate education. I think those two data points will be key indicators in coming months to know what's happening in this area. The next one, we found that very few graduate schools have plans to proactively reach out to state, provincial legislators or even congressional or parliamentary representatives. 18% of graduate deans say their graduate schools will very likely to proactively reach out to the state representatives, and 17% say their graduate schools will very likely to reach out to the federal representatives. And this, even adding those graduate deans responded likely, it's still less than half of graduate deans indicated that their graduate schools will be having these sort of legislative outreach. When we break down by the type of institutions, at the U.S. doctoral institutions, about 1 out of 5 graduate deans say their graduate schools will be reaching out to state or congressional representatives. And even fewer than that at the U.S. master's institutions, graduate deans indicated that their graduate school will have plans on reaching out to their congressional or state representatives. This is a little bit of puzzling, mainly because as I show in the earlier slide, 48% of graduate deans, although it was not as high as other priorities, but 48% of graduate deans indicated that they are very likely to communicate the public benefits of graduate education to broader audience, and additional 34% indicated that they're likely to communicate these public benefits to broader audience. And the legislative outreach being the one type of advocacy efforts to communicate the public benefits of graduate education. The part of graduate schools, or the plans for the graduate schools to reach out to these legislative offices were low, relatively low. And again, this also maybe more the organizational structural issues where graduate deans are typically not tasked to independently reach out to legislative representatives, and some of these functions are solely organized by the External Relations Office or Government Relations Office. But that is not to say that graduate deans can work with them to work with these other offices to that directly participate in advocacy efforts or have more brokered interaction for your university's representatives to communicate the benefits of graduate education. And CGS offers a number of resources for graduate deans, some of them developed by our staff members, and some of them developed by your dean colleagues, and those are available on our website. And I'm going to turn to Kenneth to talk about some of the resources available for you to take advantage of.
Great, thanks, Hiro. So today I'm going to quickly go through with you some of the resources available on the public policy and advocacy portion of our website. So the page is organized into 4 buckets or 4 sections, including public policy commentary, where we have some of the community letters that we sign on to, as well as some of the letters that CGS sends on its own to the Hill or to federal agencies. The Government Affairs Weekly Update, which is a pretty comprehensive newsletter that goes out every week that Congress is in session. So there'll be another one this Friday. It tries to touch on all of the various issues that come up in Congress and in federal agencies in the White House on issues regarding graduate education, impacting graduate education. If you don't receive it but would like to, send me an email and I will add you to the distribution list. And the portion that we're going to focus on today is the Public Policy Resources section, which has a number of different resources available for you, including something like the Congressional Calendar, which is very useful because, for instance, there is a recess coming up where Congress will not be in session, so your members will be back in their districts. So if you would like to invite them to your campus, to introduce them to your graduate students or the work that they're doing, you know when they're back home. And we have letter templates for you that could help you send them a letter to invite them to campus, or send them a letter with respect to a policy issue or an action item that you want them to take, a thank you note after a meeting, so things of that nature. They're all customizable, and you should feel free to customize them to your campus or to the meetings that you've had. The next resource is something that a number of our graduate deans have developed on their own for their own campuses. So they took their own data and their own personal stories and formed these resources that they use to advocate both with policymakers as well as on their own campuses. And you can download these and use them as templates to create something for yourself as well. The last resource I'll talk about today is the State Snapshot, which is a quick snapshot of graduate education in your state. They're available for all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. You can click on any state on the map and the profile will pop up. And there's also a list of downloadable PDFs which you can print out and use in a variety of settings. So the data comes from, well, the enrollment and degrees data comes from the data that you provide for us for graduate enrollment and degrees. And the workforce data come from NSF Science and Engineering State Indicators. And this is something that you can use with a variety of stakeholders, both on campus and off. And lastly, I'd just like to say that we realize that this is daunting, particularly for those of you who've never done it before. But we've created these resources for you to use so you can better communicate the value of graduate education to the public benefit, which isn't something that all people realize is the case. Most people think, unfortunately, that graduate education is a private good, and they think that we need to make the argument that it isn't, and that it's vital to our economy and vital to our national security. So all of these things that are being talked about in our government today. So if these resources can help you kind of start down that path, I think we would have done a little bit of our job. Thanks.
Thanks, Kenneth. And you know, as Kenneth said, like, these are resources for you to take advantage of. And even if you're a graduate school or you as a graduate dean may not have planned to directly engage federal or congressional or state representatives, these are some of the resources that you can make a case for graduate education within your institution when you talk to your provost, president, or other dean colleagues. And these will be valuable resources for you to move forward with the conversation with. at the campus level as well. So we encourage you to utilize that. Lastly, in this section, the very few graduate schools and graduate deans indicated that their graduate schools will very likely to offer additional mental health support for graduate students. Again, this is not a surprising result because the graduate deans also indicated, many graduate deans also indicated that mental health support or crisis counseling is something that's offered by units other than the graduate schools on campus. But we also did find that at some of the institutions, particularly at the U.S. doctoral institutions, there seems to be some collaborative work or the services are being offered both by the graduate schools and the other units on campus. And these are important part, as you may recall from our 2015 report, a doctoral initiative on minority attrition and completion, which is our NSF's AGAP supported project. Students appear to be in more stress in terms of health, mental and physical health in latter stage. And this speaks to, the mental health issue speaks to persistence and the retention and the eventual completion, successful completion of graduate degrees program for students. So this is some area, even if it's not directly offered by graduate schools or graduate programs units, this is something that the graduate deans and graduate schools might want to collaborate with other campus entities to make sure that these services are offered to graduate students. So we have a few more other findings and interesting numbers to note. One is the number of graduate deans indicated that their institutions are very likely to engage in the monitoring the student progress and the satisfaction. These data-driven approaches is definitely on the rise, and you may recall that some of the examples discussed at the gut data technical workshop at the last year's CGS summer workshop. And also a number of institutions, particularly at the doctoral level, are interested in tracking career outcomes of graduates. And this is not at all surprising to CGS. As most of you know, we are starting the PhD Career Pathways project with the funding support from Mellon and the National Science Foundation. And for proposal is due May 1st, and more information about the project and RFP can be accessed on our website. But we're very, very excited to say that we received almost the largest volume of letters of intent submitted from our member institutions, and we are looking forward to seeing their full proposals and preparing ourselves for the launch of this project in the coming summer. We also noted that it appears that in terms of number of graduate programs, we are still on the growth trajectory. Many institutions seems to be has a plan for creating one or more graduate degree programs, both in the traditional sense and also for the online programs as well. In terms of eliminating one or more graduate degree programs, for fewer graduate deans indicated that will be the case, but a little bit more at the U.S. Masters only, U.S. Masters degree, Masters colleges and universities. And this is some of the part that making a difficult decision in terms of where to grow and where to eliminate. And some of the resources at the beginning part of the conversation, you may be interested to going back to the webinar recording from our August 2016 webinar by our Bob Augustine featuring on the CGS project on the master's degrees. And you can see the alignment framework Bob and the master's project team proposed in looking at some of these difficult questions around where to grow and where may need to be downsized. So this concludes the prepared slides from the Pressing Issues Survey. I want to thank the research committee member from last year who had a review and provided feedback on this new set of a questionnaire, as well as the CGS leadership team. And also I want to thank this year's CGS Research Committee members for providing us feedback on some of the survey results and help us frame some of the interpretation of these results. Again, finally, and most important part is that I want to thank, again, for graduate deans for participating in the survey. And also thank the co-presenters today, Mark and Kenneth, for being a part of this conversation and providing the additional context. And if you have any questions, you can type in your questions in the section. And also, as a reminder, the slides and the recording will be emailed to participants and will be posted on the CGS website within 1 week of this webinars. So,
if you have any specific questions about the survey, follow-up questions, of course you can contact Hiro Kahana, whose contact information is here. We'll make sure in our follow-up email that includes the PowerPoint slides that we also include contact information for Kenneth, as well as some links to the resources that we discussed in today's webinar. It looks like we do have a couple of questions coming in. So if you'll just hang on 1 minute, we'll begin the Q&A period. So the question is, do you have, and this is a question I believe from Mark Smith, do you have any templates for the diversity training that is provided to faculty search members?
We don't have what you would call templates, but in fact we have a full-blown script of the diversity training that we do, which is about, I don't know, 20 pages or so, and it covers all of the points. So yes, we have those. We have extensive materials available. We're moving into a new phase right now. So the work that we had done with the training workshops had been internal to the Big Ten. And that was for the purposes of assessment and evaluation because there was a research part associated with it. But now that we're at the end of the grant, we are now trying to make that available to others. So you can contact the Big Ten Academic Alliance, Charity Farber in particular, if you're interested in having the team come out to your university and give the workshop. So 2 points there. One is, yes, the materials are available, and 2, there's an opportunity to have somebody come out and do the workshop, train the trainer, right? Show you how you can implement the workshops that we do on your campus.
All right. Thank you. It looks like we've had all of the questions we're going to have. One thing I'd just like to mention in closing is that we would also be very interested in hearing from you what types of resources and materials in the area of graduate enrollment management you would be interested in having access to. There was, of course, a lot of interest in this topic on the survey, and you can email me, Julia Kent, with any ideas or feedback you have about this topic, and we'll be sure that my contact information is included in that follow-up email as well. So thank you, everyone, for participating, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.